In the million worlds of the Imperium of mankind, there are planets of every size, every description, ranging from the brightest idyls to the darkest domains, and every possible variation between. But even in the grim darkness of the far future, where humans are herded like cattle, trapped in their billions within towering hive cities, where hunger and misery are the norm, and starvation is but a few scant days away, even here, there are still places that elicit a shudder whenever they are named. This is such a world. More a punishment than a point of origin, it is an accursed place that has but one reason to exist: to feed the Imperium endless regiments of the most disciplined warriors in the Astra Militarum, the Emperor's own Imperial Guard. This world is called Mordian, and it is the home of his Mordian Iron Guard. In the vastness of the Milky Way galaxy, there are wonders and oddities that defy the mind. For we know our own world, our own experiences, what we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. It is how we learn. Yet there are places that are so different that they can call into question all that we know. And Mordian is such a place. It is a world of contradictions. It has a duality to it that is so stark that it emulates the physical reality of the planet amongst the heavens. For Mordian is both a sun-blasted, irradiated hellhole, where one can never escape the kiss of a pitiless, perpetually lit sky, and a twilight world of frigid gloom and bitter cold, a dank hole of eternal twilight. But how can this be? The planet rotates at a speed that is much slower than those we would usually consider habitable, and as it only passes around its star once per rotation, it is effectively two worlds. The side that faces the powerful sun without mercy, or the side that never ever feels any respite from its darkness. It is called a tidally locked world. It is a challenge to live on such a planet, even were this the height of the golden age of technology. But in the current era of ignorance, zealotry, and pragmatism, it is more of a miracle. For the brighter side of Mordian is so inimical to life that it takes vast resources to survive it on an excursion, let alone a prolonged stay. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule, but they are minuscule, synthetically shielded islands on an otherwise barren half of the globe. They are refuges for the elect, but it is the other half of Mordian that is far the more important. For here there is no light, nothing but endless night. It was colonized in a different age, at a better time, and they did so in such force, such numbers, that they soon gutted the resources of the world. But this has led to a graveyard of spired hive worlds like pyramids, reaching into the sky or across its length and breadth. For some were utterly unable to perform natural large-scale agriculture or animal husbandry. It is, as stated, a miracle that it is so populous. And this is on top of its history. A dark and terrible tract of time that we shall discuss anon. Like so many other hive worlds, Mordian is mostly reliant on food supplies from off-world. Yet this is a world that has been in such peril so many times. For its greatest threat had always been the Administratum themselves. The Imperium has nearly dropped this world entirely. But what would that mean? To be dropped. It would be as if it had never existed, There would be no expectation of paying any tithe. There would be no need to defend the world anymore. But it also means that there would be no trade with it in an official capacity, and that would mean that there would also be no more food convoys. The agri-worlds would then send their supplies elsewhere, and that would inexorably mean the death sentence for 99% of the population of this world. But why would they do this? The Imperium is so vast, so sprawling, that each human is nothing more than a number, and is as important to the Imperium as its return on investment. Simply put, if the world does not provide more than it takes to maintain, then it is dropped. It is simply ignored. And the Mordian system is far from empty. It is a thriving hub of activity in the other worlds. Rhodelphia is a forge world, maintaining machinery output in the sector. Obfuscane, an industrial world, churning out endless goods for the system and beyond. Luminaria, a shrine world, a holy center, and possibly supporting Adepta Sororitas. Sanders Fall is a feral world, so rugged recruits are possible in time. Dawn and Vandar's Landing were both agri-worlds, but Vandar's Landing was lost to a virus bomb. And Nigrellum is a fortress world, a mighty bastille of the Imperium. So the predicament for Mordian itself has always been competition on top of their own woes. And Mordian has teetered on the edge for such a long time. The only thing that has ever stayed the singular signature order that would mean its utter ruin has been the Mordian Iron Guard. For the men and women of the Iron Guard are some of the most redoubtable in the galaxy, some of its most disciplined and skilled warriors. Theirs is a litany of postings across this sector and beyond. And again, we come to the stark juxtaposition of the daily life of the Hive of Mordian and the existence of its Iron Guard. But more importantly, the other tidally locked feature of its society, the Tetrarchy. For it would be difficult to find a place of such disparity. Although the harshness of the daily life of the Hive across the entire Imperium is, both by circumstances and design, utterly wretched, Mordian is an exaggerated vision of this. For the hives are many and packed, but the resources are even more scarce than usual. Meaning that you can stand in line for days for the smallest morsel of food, and in that time, the gangs and merely desperate can jostle to move forward, and like starving rats in a sack, they can turn on each other. Queue wars are regular, because none can afford to just run from them, because if they lose their place in the queue, they may starve before they reach the front of it again. So the queue wars are confined, bloody, terrible, and without end. Some spill over into massive food riots that can sweep through the hives, then onto adjacent ones, when all are perpetually in the gloom of weak artificial light, perpetually starving, perpetually at threat, never ever able to just run and hide. Deprivation of an intensity so harsh that life is barely worth living. Every hive is a tinderbox ready to ignite at any time. The opposite end of the spectrum is, as usual, the nobility. For the Imperium operates more like a feudal theocratic monarchy than most others believe, and these local authoritarians are called the Tetrarchs. Each rules a hive, and thus is unquestioned in their own kingdom. They live opulent lives, even wasting resources for islands on the sun-blasted side of Mordian. They do not hide their power, do not hold to any sumptuary laws or conventions. So the hive residents can all see their overfed forms as they lord it over the peons beneath. This regularly sets off riots, and the crowds often attempt to assail the closest holdings of the Tetrarch, if not their palace itself. With no value to their lives, mobs can be so enraged, starved and uncaring that they willingly charge gun emplacements, instinctively knowing that the defenders only have so many shots before they are overwhelmed. Unlike most civilians, they simply do not break as easily, and so the Tetrarchy requires constant heavy protection. But more than this, they require the ability to crack down, to exact a toll from any rebellion or riot. Never to stop them, for that is impossible, but to simply add more time, until the next one. The heavier the lash, the longer the memory of its sting. Many worlds would require and request a massive force of Arbites to quell the riots, to cow the populace. But on Mordian, it is far beyond that point. And even a full baton charge into the crowds will do just about nothing. Well, but get the Arbites killed. In these circumstances, only the most vicious and disciplined of militias could possibly hold order. And here is the Mordian Iron Guard. They are taken from the billions of inhabitants of the hives. Their training is efficient, but not for the timid or the untalented. And ingrained into them is an almost robotic response to most situations. Their training forges them into cold-hardened machines. They march in unison, fire simultaneously, even think in lockstep. They are iron within. Now many may balk at this assertion, but it has been stated even by the Astartes themselves that they respect the metal in the Mordian spines, the courage that seems to flow through their veins. For Mordian regiments are requested by all who know of them, sometimes purely for their lethality. For their battlefield performance is second to none, even amongst the other legendary regiments. And they are in good company, for many believe that they are the equal of the Cadians, Catachans or Krieg. Their fire discipline is astonishing to behold, their professionalism beyond reproach. For they have been known to stare directly into the mind-shattering eyes of evil and still keep firing, forever firing. But even that has a tale unto itself. And so, as I found it so gripping, for this section alone, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, "In the long and sinister annals of the Inquisition, there are many tales of treachery and horror, of the destruction of worlds and the triumph of humanity's greed and foolishness. It is a record of human weakness and the power of the Chaos Guards. Yet, amongst the record of lost planets and mortal defeat, there are a few stories of human victory. Rare cases where the demonic armies of chaos have been turned aside at the moment of success and driven back into the void from which it came. Mordian is one such world. The greatest threat to Mordian came one hot summer. The stifling heat was unusual even for Mordian, and the planet seethed with unrest. Beneath the streets brooded a secret conspiracy that posed a threat far greater than any seen before. In the depths met a dark conclave, a group of men who knew the extent of Mordian's wealth and wanted it for themselves. Away from the sight of saner citizens, they made their incantations and called upon the dark gods of chaos, and a spell was begun. It is impossible to say how much innocent blood was spilled to fuel this sorcery, or what sinister pledges were made to their dark masters. Those who cast the spell sought only personal enrichment. Their lust for power knew no bounds. They would destroy the planet itself if they had to. They cared no more for its teeming millions than did the Chaos Guards. The summer grew hotter as the spell neared its completion. Many strange things were reported in the capital city of Vanandra. The cannibal mobs and criminal gangs were restless. Men saw winged monsters hovering in the city heights. People disappeared without a trace. At last, the spell was complete, and suddenly the world shook as its sky erupted into flame and disgorged the warlords of chaos itself. From the Eye of Terror, distorted and ugly spacecraft soared into the Mordian skies to rain fire and destruction upon the world. Chaos Space Marines poured into the city, slaying all around in a great and bloody sacrifice to their gods. Demons stalked and burned towers and hunted souls of those that fled from the devastation below. From their dark hiding places, the servants of chaos crawled to the surface to bathe in the fire and terror of the world, confident of their master's favour now that their work was done. As the sky exploded into flame, the Tetrarchs of Mordian ordered their astropaths to send psychic calls for help. The power of chaos was so strong that the astropathic minds melted with the effort. It was impossible for anyone to say whether the messages got through or if help was on its way. Meanwhile, the Iron Guard fought a gallant resistance against the demonic assault. Whilst lesser troops fled in terror before the might of chaos, the Iron Guard stood their ground, pouring volley after volley of laser fire into the enemy's ranks. At last, the Iron Guard captains were forced to give the order to withdraw. Though their soldiers would stand until the end, they could achieve little against the hordes of demons and superhuman traitor marines that opposed them. Reluctantly, the Iron Guard regrouped around the capital, abandoning the rest of the planet to the enemy. Whilst the forces of chaos rampaged through Mordian, the Iron Guard prepared Vanandra's defences. Every building became a fortress, every tower a strong point, and every street and plaza a killing zone for the Iron Guard's carefully sighted weapons. At the centre lay the Tetrarchal Palace itself, from which the defence of the capital was coordinated. When the attack began, the Iron Guard was well prepared. Chaos Space Marines fell before their well-disciplined fire, as shot after shot struck their ranks. Channeled into well-prepared fire traps, the Chaos Space Marines were easily repelled, but far greater and more potent foes followed upon their heels. From the sewers and service ducts of the capital poured an army of Chaos cultists. Those wretches who had sold their souls to the dark gods, clad in rags and armed with no more than iron bars and lengths of chain, they threw themselves upon the defenders. Driven by their insane devotion to chaos, they cared little if they lived or died, and thousands were cut down by the devastating weapons of the Iron Guard. Nonetheless, this attack from an unexpected source left the defenders unprepared for the next assault. The forces of chaos moved upon the Iron Guard with purpose. Demonic and Chaos Space Marines advanced as one. Bloodthirsters of Khorne roared a great challenge to chill mortal blood. Keepers of secrets stalked the battlefield, slaying those that dared to look upon them with a withering glare. Whirring horrors skipped and chattered in an eerie blur of incandescent power. It was a terrifying sight. Yet the Iron Guard held firm before the onslaught, though many paid the ultimate price for their devotion. Street by street, building by building, the Iron Guard fell back into the heart of the capital city. Their lines drew tighter but refused to break, as attack after attack was repulsed. When losses grew too heavy to endure, or as positions were outflanked and became untenable, the Iron Guard withdrew to another line, always preserving what they could of their men and weapons. It was a battle fought with all the tactical brilliance and discipline the best Imperial troops could hope for. Yet, it was a battle the Mordians could not win. Eventually, they would have nowhere left to retreat. At last, the Iron Guard took position around the Tetrarchal Palace itself, the last strong point on the whole planet. Behind hastily constructed defences, the infantry waited for the inevitable attack. From the towers and ceremonial balconies, the barrels of las cannons and other heavy weapons glinted in the light of the burning sky. Suddenly, the horde of chaos was upon them, screaming and bellowing in its might. Greater demons of Nurgle stood clumsily amongst their minions, rising above 4 or 5 times the height of a man, giants and lords of their foul kind. The bloated demons shuffled forward, putrid innards spilling over the ground, nauseous gases bubbling from rents and tears in their leathery flesh. Beside them were the plague marines of the Death Guard, wholly dedicated to that pestilential god, their armour green and rancid with decay, their ranked bodies stiff with disease. Before them came a black cloud of flies which buzzed about the Iron Guard, crawling into their eyes and ears and filling their mouths with black hairy bodies. The Iron Guard's lasguns spat a volley of death into the screaming horde. Again the lasguns cracked with a single voice, as the captain ordered shot after shot into the wild mass. From the Tetrarchal Palace came the chattering of autocannons, the angry scream of bolters, and the piercing shriek of las cannons. With mechanical precision, the weapon crews loaded and fired over and over again, never stopping for one moment or breaking their routine. Demon gore ran like a foul river into the once white square. But as one beast fell, another, twice as hideous, marched over its body towards Iron Guard's positions. The captains ordered their men back to the palace steps and formed a last firing line. The discipline intact, the Iron Guard prepared for a single volley before the forces of chaos fell upon them. Their final moment had come, though there were few left now to witness their inevitable defeat. Little could the defenders of Mordian know of the power or purpose of chaos, or that the Chaos God's hold upon Mordian was but a tenuous one. The spell that had brought them to mortal space and imbued the flesh of their servants with physical energy was almost spent. The fires that burned in the sky grew dim, and the bellows of demons echoed shallowly in the air. As the Iron Guard watched, their enemies dissolved before their eyes. The sky darkened to its customary blackness. In the dark, the guiding lights of Imperial spacecraft glittered amongst the stars. The Iron Guard had won not just a battle, but the most precious thing of all: time. From beyond the orbit of Mordian, Imperial psychers had wrought a counterspell to break the hold of chaos. While the Iron Guard fought upon the planet, a separate battle of wills had raged between the mortals of the Imperium and the Dark Guards. Only the Iron Guard's heroic resistance had given the psychers enough time to work their mystical energies before chaos won the planet for all eternity. But the disappearance of their most potent units demoralized the remnants of the chaos attackers, and the Iron Guard took the opportunity to rout the enemy and force them from the planet, displaying an implacable will that would have impressed even the Adeptus Astartes. As a result of the Battle of Mordian, the regiments of the Mordian Guard were soon considered some of the most elite of the Astra Militarum in existence, and were deployed to multiple conflicts across the galaxy. End quote. See, I told you it was a corking yarn, but let us proceed. Imagine that. To be a survivor of this terrible war, this invasion not only from the pits of hell, but to have Chaos Space Marines never born and their own people all slaughtering one another. It must have felt like the deepest depths of the dark city of Kormorah. Yet, the Iron Guard pulled through, and then they regained control. But again, imagine that. Not just the battles waged, the decades of clearing hive to hive, street to street, room to room. for cities that could contain billions of souls. But the aftermath. The soul-rotting effect the clean-up alone must have taken on its surviving populace. And then, even then, there was no improvement in their conditions. The living hivers simply went back to the way it was before. No reward, no improvement, no mercy. How galling. Yet it has remained the same ever since, and the Mordian Iron Guard have found their niche, so to put it. As I was saying before, they are worthy and highly demanded warriors of the Imperium, but they are also requested for other duties, the speciality. For many worlds will face insurrection, be targeted by Xenos, have witch cults and chaos covens rise up, but there are even more rebellious worlds, due to just the natural order set in place. If mutants are a high percentage of the populace, if they are border worlds, rarely reinforced, or regional effects, circumstances, culture, or even nutrition make the populace ungovernable, then these worlds can soon hear the clip of thousands of feet marching in unison. The disciplined Iron Guard are known to have little mercy, even for their own hivers, their own relatives, their own people. It is simply enough to be an Iron Guard. Thus are they treated like knights in the feudal system. The wealthy know they must pay their protectors well. Thus, the family of an Iron Guard will never starve, and that is often promise enough, for they will be protected, so as to leave the soldier free of concern. A small mind is its own defense, after all. And the training in the Mordians has shadows of the Schola Progenium, for they will react to any order without hesitation, without thought. And should the local official order them to quell a civilian rebellion, then it behooves said official to watch them carefully. Else they might go to the ultimate extent and continue hunting rebels. And when the accused is put to the question, they will always confess if they did something or not. The Mordians are methodical, mechanical, and without remorse. Thus are they stationed on these worlds, for they will never question their officers, their orders, and their officers will never ever question those above them. Not just because of their training, but also because of their circumstances. If any have the capacity for such self-awareness anymore, every Mordian of the Iron Guard who has ever thought about it knows that if they lose their reputation, they will lose their utility, and then their entire world will be abandoned. So, each potentate, baron, vizier, lord or regent has the Iron Guard over a barrel even more than usual. This is, of course, not the only oddity of the Mordian Iron Guard. As you may have seen from the imagery, they are dressed to kill. Another contrast, the squalor of the hivers against the uniform elegance of the Mordian Iron Guard. Like a Napoleonic army, they stride into combat in squares, shoulder to shoulder, firing an unbreachable box. Once this was explained by them having better than average armor, carapace as well as flak under those gorgeous breastcoats. But now it is their accuracy, obstinacy, and obedience that is more the clear justification for the doctrines they enforce with such rigidity. And in many a situation, their deployment could well get them slaughtered, for they do not move without order, so can be foxed, outflanked, and outfought. But by the same token, they do not break, they do not rout, they do not run. They hold until they receive orders, and will continue the last order, almost like battle automata. Their uniforms are a sign of their mentality. All is ordered, all is perfect, all is ready at any moment of any day. And the Mordian Iron Guard are perfect troops to the micromanaging general. For all their weaknesses, they usually win out. their strength and discipline beyond compare. For it takes a certain level of madness to march in columns and squares at any opponent in the 41st millennium. But some adversaries, they were born to exterminate. Large horde attacks from Tyranids, cultists, cults, or greenskins, a speciality that allows them to truly shine. But city fighting, in all of its horror, that is where they excel the most. The Hive War. And there are no better in this field. The uniforms are a sign of utter compliance, and they reflect the pride of the regiment. For they see themselves as higher beings than the standard hivers, a better stock, even if they came up from the hives in the first place. The fixation on the perfect uniforms and presentation is intimidation itself. It shows the enemy in 1 second, just one glance, that they face someone serious, an army. And they are the epitome of mess about and find out. When they are set off the leash, they will methodically smash any insurrection, cow any populace whatsoever. And in keeping with other elements of the Napoleonic romantic image, they have 2 other important facets. Their pledge to never allow their colours to touch the ground. Common enough to protect the regimental flags and pennants, but it is intense enough a tradition for it to be specially noted. But secondly, it is the use of cavalry, and they are renowned for their armoured tank regiments. Their precision, accuracy, and unshakable stoicism make them the perfect tank operators, and their manoeuvres are balletic, but utterly lethal. Another speciality of this strangely utilitarian regiment, when considering its appearance, is the use in siege warfare. For who better than the ultimate in discipline can easily march into the guns of an entrenched enemy, and who better to fight in cramped fortifications than hive war experts? Despite it all, the pedigree, the achievements, the training, the spotless reputation built over thousands of battlefields, the Mordian Iron Guard are in danger of winking out of existence. For they are a force that does not break in the face of the enemy, even the Neverborn, the demons, even traitor corrupted Astartes, the Chaos Marines. For the tear across the galaxy has caused endless incursions into the Stygia sector, and this has led to endless clamours for more regiments to be sent. The worlds of the Mordian system were sieged by chaos, yet even when this was broken, they are still on the dark side of the galaxy. The Emperor's light does not shine into this realm, and the Regent on Baal, Dante of the Blood Angels, is too distant to be an instant saviour, if chaos does turn its eye on their home world once more. Come what may, the only thing we can be certain of is this. No matter how the Mordians die, they will do so with wounds taken to the front, not in their backs. Before I close off with a quote that encapsulates the regiment, thank you for your precious time, and no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. But let us leave this with the words of Colonel Coston Drescher of the Mordian 18th to his newest recruits. No remorse, no mercy, no forgiveness. Not a single step back. Not a single moment of hesitation. You will not succumb to fear or doubt, and you will relent only after you have given your last moment for the Emperor. Nothing less than this will be tolerated. Tulu.